I come at things from a little different. I am not from a science technical background like the three precursors to us. I work in the business world. I buy and sell companies. I consult with large organizations on business strategy and how to understand what trends are happening and how to maximize revenues. And one of the things, this is an article that we did on the Bullvine, that has really changed the way the business goes, is breeding industry will never ever be the same again. Now, we used to title it the master breeders were killed in a triple homicide. Just so you know, no one died, no one passed away. We are just talking about 3 different technologies that have changed the way we breed cows forever. Also has made a huge power shift in the way the dairy industry works. As the gentleman before me have very eloquently outlined, genomics is a revolution. It's unbelievable what it's done to the industry. My brother works within the industry, so I love to give him this slide that points out we did do a genomic test and one of us came up way superior to the other one. The other technology, and we'll get deeper into it because how they all work together, is in vitro fertilization as well as sexed semen. You put these 3 technologies together and we really have created what some people, your purist legacy breeders who maybe aren't genomics fans, they call it criminal. Because 3 things have happened along the way here. They would like to point out that we've created bulls like little dude here. We talked, I've heard people mention before that, you know, the bulls don't last long. We're always flipping over bulls, and you really get something they don't believe in. But really, it could not be further from the truth. And what started this change in the dairy breeding industry, we wrote this article over 3 years ago on the Bullvine, was why is what is good for business, AI companies, has not been ideal for those seed stock producers or those pedigree breeders in our industry, and how much that has changed. And before any of this kicked in, it was just before the breeders were allowed to test their own bulls at this stage. Producers were not allowed to test their bulls. They had to test through AI units, so they could not know their numbers before they contracted and sell the bull. The belief was that when they were going to be able to test their own bulls, that all of a sudden they would then have the bargaining chip, and the producers or the breeders who made these bulls were going to get rich. They were going to be able to say to the AI companies, I now have the power, I want you to pay my price. And that was the belief that was going on at this time. And we outlined at the time that, well, you're forgetting about these 3 types of technology that are going to change all that. Biggest one being genomics. As the gentleman before me have pointed out, we knew that the number of sires that were going to be sampled after this time, once the genomics were introduced, was going to decrease greatly. But there were other effects that came with that. Yes, sire sampling costs went down. Instead of having to sample 500 bulls, you could now sample 100, 150 to meet that same need for getting a proven sire. The belief was that then with that, sire procurement costs would go up, because now the AI companies are now fighting after a more select pool of bulls. So instead of them saying, well, we've got to hedge our risk and buy many bulls, no, we're going to buy a very select few. So the owners of those bulls are going to say, pay me a lot more. But there's a couple things that happen, is when the AI companies now have to pay more for that same bull, are they going to be able to sell that semen for that much more? And if you look at overall unit blend price, we'll see what's happened from there. But they weren't able to increase price, which then means if they're paying more for the bulls and they're having to not increase profits, revenues are going to go down. And AI companies are not in the business to lose money. There's a lot of smart individuals that work in these companies, and they get paid a lot of money to think 5, 10, and 15 years outside. So they had to do a lot of thinking. about what could happen. First one being, well, can we increase price? And if you look at it, yes, we used to give young sire semen away in some countries, or even paid incentives before, and now we're getting paid for it. Everyone thinks they're getting paid more. But if you look at the universal blend price for the semen being sold, if anything, the universal blend in North America is actually less now than it was before genomics was introduced. The other thing is, well, we'll write contracts and we'll make it so they can't have any power, and we'll have the situation that way. Well, those contracts didn't work. A company I worked with when I brought a bull to the market called Champion tried to do exclusive rights to young sires and everything else, and they got blown out of the water pretty quick. So now that left them no other option but to start their own female programs. Sitting here today, pretty much every one, maybe one of the major AI companies in the world does not run a female program, but all of the rest of them do. They now are producing their own cost-effective source of genetics, something that we'd written about before this all happened and knew that it would happen, and of course it did. And even the one company that did very much publicize that they were not going to ever own females, even here today, now sits and is amalgamated with a very strong program in North America. But there's the belief that these individuals who operate these companies are not as smart as the average breeder, or as the top breeder. They don't know bulls because they don't work with the cows each day. They don't do hands-on. They're not as invested in it. I think the gentlemen here beside me that work on the science side can easily tell you that with genomics has changed. But the other part that has changed with that is in virtual fertilization. Before, when we did this in our own programs, when you ran a high-end female program, you got 3, 4, maybe 5 flushes per lactation on a cow, so you really had to be selective on how many sires you could use. Now, with in vitro fertilization, it's almost the sky's the limit. They do it every 2 weeks. They start them as young as 6 months old. There's one AI company that's starting with 6 months by surgical method. Most of them right now are at about 8 or 9 months by traditional, but they're starting them very young. So they've got from 9 months till over 1.5 years, 2 years of age. Of every 2 weeks, they could use a different bull. So the number of sires they can use to get it right is quite extensive. So gone is that, hey, I have to narrow down with a rifle. I can use a shotgun and hit them all. The other part that had changed the industry that some people may never truly grasp or understand is the use of sexed semen. Curiosity here, if you don't mind, how many people have used sexed semen on their herds? Raise your hand if you can do it. Thank you. Sexed semen, from a commercial standpoint, has developed a lot of viability and done very well. But something very interesting happened with sexed semen when it came to the breeding industry. And what happened there, and I was sitting on a call with a company called Sexing Technologies about 3 years ago, we asked the question, why do you sell male semen on your top bulls? Simple question. But there was no good answer. I said, I never thought about that. Then they thought about it a little more, and next thing we know, they stopped allowing non-sexed semen sold on all their elite bulls. Started with one organization. Then goes to another one. And now we find ourselves today at a point where over 90% of the bulls that are being born and genomically tested are already have their genetic rights spoken for before they even are able to produce semen or embryos. They're all controlled by the large organizations. So what does that mean for the traditional breeder who now doesn't even control the barn? The calf may be in their barn, but because they used semen from an early release sire, they can't even go out and free sell that to anyone they might like. It has drastically changed the dairy breeding industry. It's changed how the pricing in the marketplace goes. You see these prices that are insane for the very top ones, but the second tier market is pretty much gone. So, when I come back to the question that I started there, dairy breeders versus genetic corporations, and who are the master breeders? Looking at today's thing, and my father is a master breeder, very honored thing, it's a coveted thing in our family that we are very honored to have, but when we're looking to the future, and the way things are going, who are going to be our future master breeders? And we're sitting there and where it's controlled by the genetic corporations. And I'll fly through this one a little bit quicker here now. One of the other things we did on our site is what type of cow are we breeding for? Are we breeding for fact, for fantasy? I used to say that we breeded for fantasy. The cow you see here is a compilation that we created using only excellent 97 scored cows. So every part on this cow is from a different animal. The head is James Rose, the body is Goldwyn Haley, the legs is Kendra, and actually we used Rose twice because that is Rose's udder. And we said this would be the ultimate cow. Now ultimately she can only score excellent 97 in Canada because that is the max score, but she would max out on all the traits. And we took that one step further and we looked at the cows that were as 2-year-olds. And we said, well, what's the epitome of 2-year-olds? So we took all the very good 89 scoring 2-year-old in Canada cows and did the same scenario. Now I can't memorize all the cows' names, but same scenario. You've got the big, long necked, open ribbed, nice set of legs and extreme texture and quality to her udder. But we looked at these cows and we said, are they the most profitable cows? Will they last the longest? Then we did the same thing and we took the top index cows at that time. And we took the ones that scored the highest for the same traits. And to be fair, they're not quite as showy as the top classifying cows. A little thicker in the neck, a little thicker throughout, but certainly a great quality cow. And we said, is this the most profitable cow? Then we took a cow that, you know, maybe she's not as deep in that fore rib. And maybe she's a little deeper in that udder. And maybe, you know, she's not as tall as those other cows. And we said, we looked at the numbers, and we said, which one of these cows will make the most milk over their lifetime? And I want you to think about, when you're breeding your cows, or you're selecting which cows you use, which ones do you epitomize? Which ones go viral on Facebook when they win shows, but which ones are actually going to make the most milk over the time? The answer is that a little more youthful 2-year-old. Wasn't even close. How many people, do you recognize this cow? How many people know what cow this is? Smurf. Yep. Yep. What makes Smurf famous? She holds the Guinness record for milk production ever. Anyone know what Smurf scored in her first classification? Good plus 84. Her legs were a little too set and she didn't have enough fore rib. Funny how that works. One of the other companies we work a lot with, or other industries we work a lot with, is in robotic milking. And when we look at these cows that are lasting the longest, I believe in numbers. Robotic milking and on-farm data systems are insane when you go looking for information. One company that we work with is looking in the US about mobility traits. We've done a lot of webinars on this, you'll see in a minute, but mobility traits, and mainly displaced abdominasons, mastitis, lameness, ketosis, and retained placentas. And we looked at what's been happening in these trends over the years. And if you compare 1996 to 2007, you're going to see on these health traits, while we did make significant improvement in traits like somatic cell and stuff like that, like the gentleman showed us before, in these traits we were actually heading the wrong direction. So Zoetis, with the work through a product they now call Clarified Plus, have started doing their own private index. Now, in respect to the gentlemen that are sitting here, Zoetis is only developing traits that are outside the currently available proofs. They have an agreement, I believe, with Holstein USA that they work together, and this is outside of any traits that are currently being offered. But they did bring those traditional CD/CB evaluations that we already have, but they've added this 6 new traits: mastitis, lameness, metritis, retained placenta, displaced abdomen, and ketosis. They also have added a few heritability traits to this test that they brought to market. But one of the things that was really interesting when we got into this is the importance of having direct selection for these traits. So instead of looking at traits like net merit or productive life, where we're doing indirect or implied breed improvement that we know that in general we have to because the cows are living longer, this works more on, let's actually look at the pieces of it and see what happens. Now you'll see for 5 of these 6 traits, there wasn't even an index already available. The only one that's relatively the same, you have productive life, which is daughter pregnancy rate has a high correlation. What we found is when they put the weight on these other traits, yes, there was a decrease in overall correlation or improvement of net merit, but on all these other key metrics that actually produce longer living cows, there was a greater increase, to the point where it's an estimated $55 when using a aggressive cull rate rate of improvement over selecting for net merit alone. So these health traits are certainly going to change the way we're going in this industry, especially in the commercial side of the business and what's going on. For those of you, and I quickly went over it because of the time today, for those of you that are looking for more on that, we have about 5 or 6 webinars on this issue on our website under the bullvine.com/webinar that we presented with Zoetis. The other thing is, when we look at where we're going in the future is, and I mentioned it earlier, is robotic milking. These on-farm data systems, while they don't have owner sampled milk testing, and they don't have some of the supervised testing we have, they have an insane number of observations of data. And I already know that it's in the process for bringing to market traits like reject rate, fetch rate, milk flow, and 8 other traits within the robotic system that we are identifying to offer to producers who work in that environment. Some more stuff on that. We recently helped at presented a seminar with D. Laval in Las Vegas, where Dr. Jeff Bewley from the University of Kentucky did a lot on this whole subject. So again, if you go to our website, you'll see whole presentations on what's possible there, what's coming along, and what could happen. But this all opens up for one other issue, and that is, what is the end of this thing? Are we ready for a genetically modified cow? We're thinking about next technologies, and Tom certainly told us why we maybe don't want a Jersey Holstein cross, but there's other ways to go about it. One of the ones that maybe many people haven't considered yet is on gene editing. So maybe you don't have to select every one bull. Maybe you could select 8 traits that you liked from 8 different bulls and put them all together. You say to me it's not possible. I say, oh, it's possible. It's actually happening. And if you were to do the ultimate one on gene snippets right now, the AKA super cow with all the alleles that or snippets we've identified would produce a bull that has a net merit of 675. As a 6,745, sorry. And as a reference point, the top net merit bull right now is just around 1,000 points. So 6 times the rate of where we're at. So here's where we are, and we're doing great. But the potential is insane. A speaker earlier this morning mentioned about the issue that, I'm sorry, my slide didn't quite go that way, mentioned about the issue of we've got a population base that we've got to feed. And yes, GMOs are a touchy issue, but in work I've been doing with USDA, they tell us if you take native genes from a native animal and snip them together, that's not a genetically modified animal. So you can't take polled from a beef cow and put it on a dairy cow, but if you took a Holstein trait from a Holstein and put it on another Holstein, it's still a Holstein. Now, I'm pretty sure my friends at Holstein USA and Holstein Canada is going to tell me, how do we register said animal, because we don't have a definite mother and father, and that is an issue. But I don't think commercial producers really care about that, and I can tell you the world's population is going to not have issues about that. The people that tell us GMOs won't happen because public doesn't like them, look at the cotton and soy industry, people. 80% of the world's production. Look at the corn industry. A couple other things that are on the horizon when we're talking about the future of genetics. Epigenomics. Really, really neat research coming out on here on some stuff they've done in mice, where what you feed the sire has an effect on how the calf performs. They have some data on that. So we say, hey, it's all genomic level, but it's how do they express that? Some people talk about, we have 3 full sisters that have relatively close genomic tests, but the 2 do great, but 1 didn't do it, and we don't know why. And a lot of that comes down to what epigenomics they had. So certainly a part of the industry that's going to change drastically. The other one, and my sister always wants me to point out to this one because she is a nutritionist, is nutrigenomics. How do we leverage what animals eat, what respond to different things? There is evidence that shows that you can feed 2 cows the same ration and they could have a relatively the same index, but based on how they respond to different rations, one might give you more milk than the other one on that ration. Sure, we talked about proofs across large countries or around the world, but maybe a cow that feeds on a grass and grazing ration is not the same milk proof as a cow who's fed on a TMR, because they feed convert differently. It's a question we're going to have to answer over the next few years, and I'm sure the gentleman to my left will certainly have a key role in kind of answering all of that. Back a little bit to the consumer reaction side of things. I am a photographer in the show ring. You'll see me in the ring tomorrow. I shoot at Expo and all of that. Consumers are going to dictate our future. They get mad when they see pictures like this. Breeders love it. This cow's celebrating. We got Justin slapping Maya with Grand, a very big moment, and that way. But consumers react negatively to things like that. They don't necessarily enjoy that. And we have to think about, as an industry, who our end buyer is. And as much as this is great and we love it, our consumers what drives our pocketbooks, and we need to always remember that. I want to thank everyone for speaking there. All that stuff that we did is on our website. It is free. We send out to over 33,000 subscribers currently on a weekly and daily basis. There's a lot of free materials. There's also a group I'd encourage everyone here to join, where we have 6,000 dairy breeders from around the world, and we get anywhere from 200 to 300 comments a day about different issues, from straight up commercial milk production to what should I breed my cow to should we slap cows or not, and a lot of other fun things that way. For those of you that were on the car tour or tours with me yesterday, our website, our Facebook page also, as soon as I have internet again, we'll have all the pictures from yesterday and around here while we've been here. In the beginning, I did say that, I was choosing between cows and my wife. First choice is always my wife and my kids, and I appreciate that. And as was mentioned when I started, I do apologize for letting you misinterpret what I was saying. If you took offense to anything I was saying, I'm sure that it was a misinterpretation with the translation. It couldn't have been something I said.